Alright, hello and welcome. I'm recording this video instead of live streaming. I wanted to do a couple of videos on the TSN Sandbox to show off some of the latest things and look at the different consoles, particularly for those people who are interested in running the TSN Sandbox or joining the TSN RP community. So this is my first video that I'm going to put together. It's just going to be a live, almost like a live stream, pre-recorded, but I'm not going to do any editing on it, so hopefully it comes out okay. First of all, I've opened up the tactical console. This is on a light cruiser, so in the middle is my ship. This is the TSN Falcon. I'm going to go through this tactical console, how it's put together, some of the different features. Some of it's very different to the legendary missions that you get with a stock Artemis Cosmos game. So, yeah, we'll have a look. First things to look at is the layout. So you can see we've got the 2D map in the middle. I can click and drag and move around the 2D map. I can use my scroll wheel to zoom in and out of the 2D map as well. And then some other controls that I can do at the top. There's the zoom controls that are positioned here. So I can step zoom in, zoom out, and select particular zooms. This button here doesn't really do much at the moment. It's to do with diplomacy and things, but I'll do a different video on that. Something to note is when you click and drag like this, it becomes decoupled from your ship, so your ship will keep moving, but your view won't change. But if you want to look at a particular target, so if I'm over here and I'm looking at Zero Station, my ship will be moving around, but my view won't be. To link it back to the ship, I've got to click one of these icons up here and it resets the view back to my ship. So that's the 2D map. You'll also notice on the right hand side here, if you played Artemis Cosmos, this layout is very much different to Artemis Cosmos. At the top, I've got the shield status of the ship. So you can see we've got forward and aft shields. I've got system status here as well. This is the damage to different systems that's linked to the engineering console. And it's specifically for the weapons officer. So you can see if your ordnance loaders, beam arrays, and shield emitters are damaged or not, and that gives you an indication of why things might not be loading as quickly or your beams might not be firing. Underneath is the magazine status. You can see what torpedo types you have, what quantity you have, and the maximum that you can have in the magazine. So I separated out. There's the magazine and there's the cargo hold. The magazine is what you've got live and can fire out the tubes and load into your tubes. The cargo hold, you can have additional ordnance in your cargo hold that you can transfer into the magazine. So you can overstock on homing torpedoes to a certain extent and move them across. There's a scroll bar here so you can scroll up and down, see if there's any more. There are 5 different torpedo types here, but there are more built into the sandbox. There's 2 more called the Disruptor and the Penetration, and then there's a couple more that I'm adding as well as part of seasons and stories that we tell. Below that, the shield control, so just raising and lowering shields. Below that is the beam frequency control, so setting the beam frequency is communicated by the science console. And then there's this toggle here, which is an auto manual toggle. I'll go through that in a little bit. At the bottom, we've got 2 sub-consoles. So this is the weapons sub-console, which is for all your targeting, and then a weapons systems sub-console that's for to do with weapons management. I'll talk through that in a moment. And then on the left-hand side here, there's your torpedoes that you can select, your tubes that you can load, and then your fire button that you can fire. If you're wanting to target an enemy ship, you just select it on the screen, and that will target that enemy ship. Get rid of that science reticle as well while here. Okay, so that's the layout of the console. And I'll talk through some of the different ordnance types. So you've got, if you're familiar with Artemis 2 or you played Artemis Cosmos, you'll know these types because these are standard types. Your homing torpedo is a straightforward torpedo that fires out the ship, tracks onto a target, hits it and causes some damage either against shields or hull. The homing torpedoes in the sandbox are slightly upgraded from the base game, so they cause a little bit more damage. Nuclear torpedoes, similar to the homing torpedoes, but they have a blast radius. So when they hit an enemy ship, there's a blast that ripples out from it. Anything within that blast radius can be damaged by it. That includes your own ship. So if you fire a nuke and you're within that blast area, it will hit you and it will damage your ship. They're very, very powerful. The Krellian ship here, that's designated Quebec 10, if you hit that with a nuke, it's more than likely going to die, even as shielded. They're very useful against things like Torgoths or Arvonians or big formations of ships. EMP is specifically hit against shields. Again, it's like a homing torpedo that it fires out your ship and tracks onto your locked target. It has a blast radius as well. When it hits, it will halve the shields of the target that it hits. So, for example, if I can load this one up because I can demonstrate this one, it will also, if you're within the blast radius, it'll have your shields on your ship as well. So be mindful of that. If I select Quebec 10, fire my EMP, there goes the torpedo. It hits. This blue is the blast radius, and you can see the shields of that ship. They've been halved. Mine, this one doesn't track any targets. It just deploys from the rear of the ship directly behind you. It's got the same power as a nuke, so if it goes off and you're close by, you're going to cause serious damage to your ship. It also has a blast radius, and it'll stay active until something gets within a certain range of it and detonates it. One of the ones that you won't be familiar with is a scorch torpedo. This is something that's built into the sandbox. The scorch torpedo, if you fire it at a target with low shields or no shields, it'll hit the target and it'll take out a subsystem on that target. So it might take out the weapon systems or the shield systems. It might take out the cloaking device if it's a Scar, and it might damage the cargo hold if it's a transport ship. There's two more ordnance types as well that we have. There's the Disruptor, which is specifically for damaging an enemy's shields, so it won't cause any damage to their hull, but it'll cause additional damage to shields. And a Penetration, if you're familiar with Artemis 2, is basically what the P-Shock was. If you hit an unshielded target with a penetration missile, it just destroys the target almost immediately because it causes massive damage to the hull. So those are different ordnance types. Let's go on to shields. So over here, I've got my shield control. If I hit that, it raises shields. I can see that my shields are raised on my ship because I've got the green forward and rear shields. As those drop, they change colour as well. They go to amber and red, and you can see the shield status will change up here as well. And to lower the shields, I can press that. I have set up a hotkey so specifically for raising shields and lowering shields instead of toggling them. So in the base Cosmos game, there's a toggle shields on and off, but in the sandbox, I've added extra hotkeys so you can just press one button and it'll raise shields, and a different key and it'll lower shields. Beam frequencies, you've got Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo frequencies. Science communicates which frequency to set, and whichever's lowest is the one that you want to be selecting. And the auto and manual. At the minute, the beam array is in auto, so this only applies to the primary beams, which are the green arcs on the ship. There's two primary beams on a light cruiser. There's more primary beams on things like an interceptor or bigger battle cruisers that we have as well. If I want to switch to manual targeting, I hit this toggle, and then there's a couple of things on this manual targeting that are quite different. The first one is a target priority. For this to work, Science has to have scanned the target and scanned the target subsystems. And then when I select a target, so if I select Hotel 1-4 and I go to target priority, I can get a readout of what systems I can hit. So I could hit its hull, which is just your general damage. Its impulse, if I hit that and it takes it offline, the ship will stop. Its shields, if I hit that and it takes it offline, the shields deactivate completely, and then they take a time to switch back on. So they won't recharge, they'll switch off completely. It's slightly different to just shield damage. Beams, which obviously will destroy the weapon systems. If you take that offline, the beams will actually switch off, so you no longer see their beam marks. The more damage that beams take against an enemy ship as well, the slower rate of fire they have. And then cargo hold. This is specific for this transport ship. Transport ships, you can target the cargo hold. If you are hitting an enemy ship's cargo hold, what will happen is eventually they'll start to drop cargo out of them every time you hit them. So you'll fire a beam and some cargo will drop out or some debris will drop out. So for those pirates out there that like attacking transport ships, this will be the one that you guys would like. Um, Different ships have different subsystems that you can target. So a Krelian over here, for example, they have the impulse shields and beams, but it doesn't have the cargo hold because it's not a cargo ship. Scarans have things like you can target their cloaking array, so you can take their cloaking device offline and stop them doing that. And then you get things like Torgos with their drone launchers, so you can target Torgos drone launchers, take them offline so that they're not firing drones anymore. Linked with targeting priority is this aperture. So if you want to increase your chances of hitting the target point, you have to bring down the aperture. And the idea is that it's like your beam is narrowing and focusing more on a specific target point. Your damage output is slightly less because your aperture is narrow, but the likelihood of actually causing damage to one of these subsystems, if I select that again, one of these subsystems is increased. So the damage to these subsystems goes up, but the overall damage to the ship goes down. Science gets a readout of like how much hull that enemy ship still has, and they'll only see it tick down 1% or 2% when your aperture's low, but they'll also see the damage to these subsystems go up much quicker. Aperture at 100% is your standard, and then you can increase the aperture to 300%. Now at 300%, you cause more damage to shields than you would normally, but less damage to hull. So the aperture is the idea is that it's a wider beam, so it's over a wider area, and you're increasing your damage to shields. Something to mention here as well with your target priority: if you go with a narrow aperture and you're targeting a shielded target, if the shields are up, you're not going to be able to get through and cause damage to that subsystem because it's shielded. If their shields are low or completely down, then you're far more likely to hit and take out that subsystem. So that's that. Toggling auto manual beams, by the way, resets these to 100% if you need. The last thing on the manual is the beam array power. So you've got a power, which is the 100% power, and the actual damage output, which is 1 in this case. You can reduce that right down if you want, and even switch the beam array offline. So you can see I've switched that 1 beam arc offline, and then increase it back up, just so that you've got a bit finer control. It means you can attack a target, take out its subsystems, and not have to worry about destroying it or causing too much damage. So you can bring your beam arrays right down and cause very little damage to them, but then prioritize their cargo hold, for example, chip away at that, and you know you're not going to accidentally destroy this cargo ship that you're trying to engage. So that is this screen. Let's see, anything else on my notes? That's it for now. Here, we'll take a look at the weapon system. So if I flick over to this is a sub console. So you can see at the top, I've got tactical as my main console. Sub consoles are weapons and weapon systems. In here, it just gives you a few more controls. So I've got the system status repeated, so you can see that nice and clearly. There's this safety toggle here. If I flick back to weapons and I try and target November 2-1, the target will go on, but then will automatically drop. It means that I'm not going to accidentally fire at an allied ship. If I go into weapon systems and I switch the safety toggle off, I can target and the target will remain. So that means I will start to fire at that allied ship there. So if there's an ally that's gone rogue, for example, I can target them. But if I've got lots of allies in the area with that safety on, it's going to mean that I don't end up accidentally damaging those allies or other player ships that are in the area. Auto targeting, if I switch that on, auto targeting goes and picks the closest target and just sets it as my weapons target. So I don't have to think. So you can see there, if I deselect, it will reselect that target automatically for me. If I'm trying to do something else or I'm split covering somebody's position, I can switch on auto targeting knowing that weapon systems are going to go and target the nearest enemy ship to us. So whatever's in arc will end up being targeted. I can toggle that one off. I'll come back to tractor beam in a moment, but this is the toggle to activate and deactivate tractor beam. And then below we've got the magazine and the cargo bay. So you can see in the cargo bay I've got several homing torpedoes, nukes, EMPs, and mines, and 2 Scorch. And then in the magazine you can see that I've got 6 out of 6 nukes, 4 out of 5 EMPs, 3 out of 3 mines. So you can see like the status of my magazine. I can transfer ordnance from the magazine into the cargo hold, which means it's no longer usable. It goes into my cargo hold there. Or if I want to reload my magazine from my cargo hold, I can transfer it back. So like I'm down to 4 EMPs out of 5, so I can transfer a 5th one in there and reload. If there's something in your tube, so I've got a homing torpedo here, and I've got 15 out of 16 homing torpedoes, I'm not going to be able to transfer in because I won't have any room then to unload my tube. So it takes into account what's in your tube. There's also a limit to what you can have in the cargo bay. You cannot have more ordnance in your cargo bay than you can have in your magazine, so there's a maximum amount. So you can't go to a base and transfer every single homing torpedo across, like have 100 homing torpedoes. There is a limit on it. I think the limit is 16 on there, so it matches what you can have in your magazine. Basically, you can carry one full reload of your magazine on your ship. Okay, the last bit to look at is the tractor beam. So this is a fairly new system as well that's unique to the sandbox. If I activate the tractor beam and I go back to weapons, the first thing you'll notice is I no longer have any B marks. So B marks have completely gone and there's no beam control here at all. That's because the tractor beam switches off the beams. Next thing, I've got down here in the left corner where the torpedo tubes were, a distance, a heading, and an activate tractor toggle. Again, once your tractor beam's activated, you cannot access your torpedoes loading and firing, so you can't be firing torpedoes. They're switched off as well. I'm just going to create a couple of pieces of cargo here. So I'm going to have one there and one there. All right. Tractor beams also have some limits. First off, they have a maximum range of 3,000. So anything beyond 3,000, you won't be able to select in tractor. They have a pull rate that repositions an object that is controlled by the engineer putting power into the beams. So if they put more power into beams, the actual item is pulled to you quicker, which means you can move a bit faster. If the ship travels at a speed greater than warp 2, the tractor beam won't hold, it'll break, so your maximum speed is warp 2. Be mindful as well if engineering boosts power to warp and you're traveling at warp 2, that gives you a speed greater than warp 2, so your tractor's going to break there as well. Whilst you're tractoring a target, you've got to keep it selected. So if you deselect that target, the tractor lock will break. So that's some limitations. So here I've got a piece of cargo out of 5k. To tractor, I would select it with my normal weapon selection. And then you'll notice, because it's out at 5k and I activate tractor, it will not do anything at all. so I can't tractor that. This one I can tractor, so I can select that, I can activate my tractor, and it will pull this piece of cargo into position. Once it's active, you can see a couple more controls. The first thing is strength, so that's a readout of how much strength that it's being given. If the engineer goes on and increases or decreases the power on the beam power, then you'll see that strength increase and decrease. So if I increase the power on engineering, you can see the strength has gone up to 242. If I decrease the power on engineering, then my strength will start to go down. You can see now it's at 25%. All right. There's a realign and there's a distance and a heading slider. So you can see this piece of cargo now is at a distance of about 1,000 and directly behind the ship. If I wanted to reposition that piece, say up here, I need to change this heading slider. So it will be, say, negative 45 degrees. So if you imagine 0 straight up, negative 45 around here, and 45 around here. And then to move it to that position, I click realign, and it'll move that piece of cargo into that position. And it'll go to about 1,000 out. There we go. I can change the distance as well, so I can increase the distance. Say if I want it 2,000 away, I can go and move this slider, hit realign, and it will reposition 2,000 out. So you can use your tractor beam to position things around you if you want. Say if, for example, this sensor relay was out of position, you could tractor it behind your ship, move to a new position, and then set it up really precisely where you want it to be. And yeah, it's just a fun little function that we've got now on ships. That is everything on the weapons console. I hope it was an interesting video. I'll try and produce some more where I go over the helm console, the engineering console, the science console, logistics, and all those kind of things. And I'll just create those videos and upload them and put them on when I've done them. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.